a reach, man.
That's right. Make sure they make orange sweeter than the last batch. Because them nearly choke my customer them.
They're lucky. Maybe them not used to nothing good.
You know, all we're going in Jamaica, you think me gonna start put my money under my mattress, you know? Because it's much safer than them, your bank, yeah? And at least my mattress will give me back support.
May I tell you, the banks them these days charge too much fees. That's why I put my money in crops. And when I need money, I just come sell to you.
Excuse me, what did I hear you two just planning the next great mattress investment?
And what if we are? At least my mattress no charge me for sleep on it.
But if you consider that storing your money at home is like storing ice cream out in the sun, it won't last long.
At least if it melt out, I know where it went.
Unless some long finger relative not find it first. And then your money disappear faster than, what his name, Houdini. Melting is the least of your worries after that. What about your hungry belly cousin? Any cat can play, you can even be here in the market, and the money the woman burn down.
You know, me did have a thief in cousin. Him thief sweet out a sweetie.
True.
I know banks may seem like they're full of fees, but they're like a nice piece of steamed fish. You just need to know to deal with the bones, and then everything's good.
I don't like bones, and I don't like fees.
But you're missing out on a whole lot just because you don't want to deal with the bones. Bank is more than just about holding the money, you know. It's about growing your money with interest and other products. It's about accessing your money using a card that works in Jamaica and all over the world. Plus, you're building credit, which means you can buy a house, you can buy a car, and you can invest in your business. And that's just the beginning. What I try to say is that if you want your wealth to grow, you have to put your money in the right place. Storing money at home is like planting a mango seed in a shoebox and expect to see the big tree.
You say growing money, right? Yeah. You know, I never thought about it like that.
Exactly, Miss Pat. And as I said, if you have the account, it means you can get a loan. You can buy stuff for your stall. And any money you put in is protected by deposit insurance.
Yeah, but what about the fees? Them just nibble rolling in your money like rat in your house.
We know no phone not just bank. Yes, some accounts have fees, but you have options with minimal charges. And there's even ways to go around it, like using the same bank ATM. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you focus on the fees, you're missing out on the bigger picture, which is making the money work smarter, not harder, and bank help you to do just that.
Well, if I saw it go, me would have loved the help because me already work hard as it is.
Banks and I get along like puss and dog, you know.
Well, Master Roy, maybe it's time you call a truce. After all, puss and dog can live in the same yard without a fuss.
Well, come on, Master. You and I need to step into the modern world before it leaves us behind.
True. And if your money multiply, I'll accept a small commission on some of them fruits here, you know. It's a good one.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winford Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Lead Story Prime, Budget Special, brought to you by...
Managing your investments with Sagicor is now easy as ever. Contact your wealth advisor to update your personal information.
disagreements over drawdowns from the National Housing Trust to an apparent agreement over a new tax invoicing system to the multiple big projects announced by the Prime Minister and ideas from the opposition. This budget debate has given us a lot to talk about. Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness spoke last Thursday after Finance Minister Favour Williams opened the debate. Both opposition spokesmen on finance, Julian Robinson, and the opposition leader Mark Golding have now made their presentations. Mr. Golding joins us now in studio for this lead story budget special on CVM TV. I'm Giovanni Dennis. Thank you so much for joining us. You raised in your presentation how long it has taken the government to establish the bill, to present the bill to establish the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority to guide the post-Melissa rebuilding efforts. Have you had a chance to look at it since the Prime Minister presented it last Thursday?
I haven't had a chance to read it thoroughly yet. After the budget debate closes, I will. I was citing that as one of 5 examples of the slow pace at which the government delivers legislation. And I see that the Prime Minister rushed to bring it to Parliament on Thursday after I spoke on Tuesday. It was in long form, which means it hasn't gone through the government printing office yet to be printed. So, you know, it was obviously, there was some urgency to respond to what I said. But that's good. I mean, it's a step forward, and we'll be looking at it carefully to see what it does and what it doesn't do.
You said you haven't looked at it in detail, but to have a glance, does it give you a better idea as to how the reconstruction work is going to happen?
Not really. It's a framework. It's a framework document, so it deals with how the authority is constituted, what its objects are, its functions, etc. But the actual work that it will be undertaking, the resources that are available to it, and the time frame that it will be executing its work over, all of that remains to be seen. You know, what I did notice in the Prime Minister's presentation was that he spent a lot of time talking about various projects, you know, and I was a little surprised he didn't spend more time actually talking about reconstruction that's going to impact people who have been very badly impacted by the hurricane themselves. You know, the tens of thousands of Jamaicans who have had houses destroyed or very badly damaged. The roofs program, which was funded out of the budget for this year that's coming to an end with $10 billion, not even a third of 1% of GDP, that has really scratched the surface in terms of trying to get people back into habitable shelter. And the current budget didn't really address that issue, and the Prime Minister ignored it largely. So I was surprised at that. You know, I thought he would have focused very much on what needs to happen this fiscal year coming, because that is a situation of crisis in the country, especially in Western Jamaica. It was, you know, hearing all these plans, some of which we've heard before about, you know, bypass roads and what have you. I mean, you know, that wasn't really what I was looking for from the budget. But we will see. You know, there have been so many promises in the past which haven't been delivered on. We still haven't even finished the South Coast Highway project from Harborview going around to Port Antonio. That's still incomplete. The building, the urban center, which was opened months before the election was called, it's still not complete. So, you know, I'm not optimistic about the execution of projects by this government.
Let's go to a clip now with the Prime Minister speaking about NARA in Parliament last Thursday.
We must, as a country, confront an uncomfortable reality. While Jamaica has built one of the most credible macroeconomic frameworks in the developing world, the execution of large investment projects too often moves at a pace that belongs in another era. Layers of approvals, fragmented processes, and rigid procurement rules, though designed with good intention, can make it difficult to move quickly when transformational opportunities arise. In today's global economy, capital is highly mobile, and investors compare jurisdictions not only on stability and incentives, but on speed of decision-making and certainty of execution. Too often, promising opportunities have gone elsewhere, to countries that are simply more nimble. We cannot allow this to continue. Even recently, Madam Speaker, I have seen projects that were eyeing Jamaica. Investors got frustrated and have gone elsewhere. We are advancing two powerful and complementary reforms. One focused on how we build infrastructure and the other on how we attract and accelerate transformational private investments. NARA will have special powers, that is the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, will have special powers to accelerate development approvals as well as procurement, enabling the execution of resilient infrastructure.
You heard what he said right there, special powers to accelerate the development and the rebuilding. Any initial thoughts on whether you agree with the direction being taken?
Well, he had announced this, I think, in early December, so there's nothing new in that. We know that the government has struggled to execute projects on a timely basis. The capital budget in the year after year is not fully spent, and it's notorious how difficult it is to get the procurement rules complied with on a timely basis, etc. So, I don't have a problem with any agency that is seeking to deliver efficiency in the execution of projects, as long as there's transparency and a robust governance framework, and so we can be assured that there will be accountability for all of the money spent. I'm very wary of the ability of this government to use funds in a way for which they weren't intended. So that is going to be a big issue for us.
What are you saying right there? Why?
Well, all of the scandals of the past, that we've seen in public agencies, numerous ministers have had to resign or be moved around. I mean, there's a long litany of scandals under this government. So I don't have a lot of faith in the integrity of the government and how they deploy resources, public resources that belong to the taxpayer. So this NARA agency has to deliver the confidence that there will be proper accountability for every cent that is deployed in there.
The Auditor General is there and doing a good job, you would agree?
Oh yeah, but that's always after the fact. The Auditor General is looking back historically at things that have already gone wrong and reporting to Parliament on that. It's very important, and that's why we've had some accountability for some of these things.
Since Melissa, the Auditor General has come out with almost an instantaneous report about some of the procurement processes. We saw the issue with Darrell Vaz as well. So the Auditor General is working almost simultaneously and quickly in this instance, not so much a far back look back afterwards.
Well, the issue with the internet connectivity and so on, the Starlink devices and what have you, she dealt with that very quickly. And I have a lot of confidence in the Auditor General. But the reality is that there's a lot of money being spent through the public sector at all times, and the capacity of the Auditor General's office to look at all these things is what it is. For example, she's currently, as I understand it, looking at the procurement of the old buses, which took place back in May, June, July last year. So there's quite a bit of time elapsed, and that would be fairly quick actually, because there are many reports on issues which have some years in the past. So that's just the nature of a process which is looking historically at something. But what I want to know is that the actual funds that are being spent, there's a mechanism, there's a framework in place to ensure that the funds are not leaked, that the funds are used exclusively for the public purposes for which Jamaica will have borrowed this money. Remember, most of this $6.7 billion is debt. It's additional borrowing that the people of Jamaica are going to have to pay back. We've spent the last 15 years trying to reduce our debt to GDP ratio and our overall public indebtedness. This recovery exercise financed largely by debt is going to reverse that. So we want to make sure we get full impact, positive impact for every dollar that's borrowed and spent.
Yeah. Just before the break, I want to go straight into the NHT. The government and the opposition continue to spar over this. The opposition says the government needs to stop taking the $11.4 billion. You have said that per year from the NHT, but the Prime Minister has said that, listen, it's because of Hurricane Melissa, and he says the government had no realistic alternative alternative. He also said, quote, the NHT remains solid, well-capitalized public body that is not a fiscal risk to the government. The transfer has not in any way impaired the ability of the NHT to fully satisfy demand for mortgage loans. Is there anything the Prime Minister has said here that you believe is incorrect?
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate. I think that the taking of these resources out of the NHT now since, 2013. It was originally authorized by law for 4 years at a time when Jamaica's debt to GDP ratio was 140%. We were at the precipice of financial collapse, and this was an extreme measure that was required then. He was publicly opposing it as hard and ruthlessly as he could at the time, and an affiliate of the JLP even took the matter to court and lost. And then when they came into office in 2016, they proceeded to pass legislation twice since then, extending it for another 10 years it's been, and now in the throne speech in February they said they're going to extend it for 5 more years. I don't think you can blame Hurricane Melissa for that.
Give me 1 second. I do want to continue on this point, but we are up on our first break. This is Lead Story Budget Special. We're talking to Opposition Leader Mark Golding, reacting to the Prime Minister's presentation, many issues that Mr. Golding himself has raised. We also want to talk to him about some of what he has presented, but much more when we come back here on Lead Story. Stay with us.
On March 28 at 6 p.m., John Mark Wigan presents his album launch, By Fire, live at the Jamaica College Auditorium. By Fire features the likes of Kevin Downswell, Rondell Positive, Alicia Taylor, Gilead Collective, Genesis Praise Squad, Audia Spencer Brown, Ryan Davis, Prince Saj. General tickets $4,000. Sponsored by JP St. Mary's, Credit Unions of Jamaica, Honey Bun, Chicken and Things, CVM, Love 101, Green Room Studios, Painted Lady Studios, Crosslinks Production, Imperium Gospel Limited. Proceeds support the Student Housing Initiative.
Welcome back to Lead Story or Budget Special. We're speaking to Opposition Leader Mark Golding for the full hour, and before the break he was speaking about the National Housing Trust and concerns about the government continuing the $11.4 billion drawdown annually for the next 5 years. Yeah. The Prime Minister has taken issue with the opposition, saying that the NHT would be able to provide more housing solutions if not for the drawdowns. He said, that suggestion is one, misleading and fundamentally misrepresents how the NHT works, since the real problem is that we can't get enough projects off the ground, he says, because we don't have enough contractors who can handle those projects. We don't have enough land where people want to live, and there is too much bureaucracy. Is he right?
Well, those are management issues, and I would agree that there's a fair amount of mismanagement under his watch of that portfolio, and that is why there's such a huge unmet demand for affordable housing in the country. But taking $11.4 billion each year out of a financial institution, it has an impact. And it's having an impact in how the NHT operates now, where all but the very bottom level loans are outsourced to the private sector. The private banks have to fund those loans for the NHT, and the NHT has to pay those banks a subsidy, an interest rate subsidy, so that the borrowers are getting the rates that the NHT advertises rather than the higher rates that the banks would normally lend at. That's a big cost to the NHT as well. So to say that taking these resources out of the NHT is not making any difference is absolutely untrue. And look at the level of devastation of the housing stock of the country, especially in Western Jamaica, in St. James, in Hanover, in Westmoreland, in St. Elizabeth, parts of Manchester and Trelawney as well. The NHT is the primary housing agency of the country, public sector housing agency, and they ought to be empowered to deal with that problem, the crisis in housing, which Melissa has made that much worse. So I don't accept his explanation, and I think he is misleading the public.
Do you not see, though, why it's necessary given Melissa? It's an extenuating circumstance, or is the opposition, and I put this to Cleveland Tomlinson when he came here last week, is the opposition being hypocritical in its criticism of the government, especially for this fiscal year with the drawdown from the NHT?
If the Prime Minister had made a commitment that he was ending this as of, say, March next fiscal year, the March of the coming fiscal year, And because of the situation, Hurricane Melissa, I would say it's bad and not so bad. But he's talking about extending it for 5 more years. And I don't think he can blame Melissa for that. And the truth is that, as Julian Robinson in his presentation on the budget showed, that the gap that they're trying to fill by adding, $18 billion of taxes plus another $11 billion of drawdown from NHT, there are other ways of addressing that funding gap. And so I don't accept that it's a necessity to do it. But if, as I'd said, if the commitment was given to stopping it, I would feel some relief.
But is there a commitment to stop it in 5 years, as you mentioned?
I don't know. He hasn't said so. I mean, he's extended it now. This will be the 3rd time it's being extended. And indeed, in the past, it was extended for 4 years at a time. This time, he's saying he's extending it for 5 more. So I don't know what they plan to do at the end of that period, and neither do you.
Does the opposition plan to take the government to court if it doesn't stop?
No, this matter has been litigated already. As I said, the NGO, which is affiliated with the Jamaica Labour Party, attempted to take the PNP to court when it was first implemented for 4 years, and they lost that case. And I don't think that matter is now justiciable again. That has been determined by the court already.
Yeah. Do you support the additional NHT benefits for some class of public workers like teachers, nurses, and Jamaicans under 35?
We do. In fact, the restoration of the lower interest rates for public sector workers is the restoration of a policy that had been implemented by Portia Simpson Miller when she was Prime Minister and was taken away under Andrew Holness. And indeed, one of our manifesto pledges was to restore that. And the Prime Minister is restoring it now because of the advocacy of the PNP all through last year. So yes, we do support that. And we support making deposit funding available by way of grants to young people to help them to get on the home owning ladder. That was something that we had proposed, and NHT should be able to do that based on our calculations. So yeah, we support those types of programs.
Yeah. Speaking about support, in a very rare moment, the Prime Minister agreed with a proposal that you put forward. The opposition has suggested a new electronic tax invoicing system that you say would bring in millions more that could help fund the budget. Could you first explain your idea for us?
Well, this is one of several measures that I proposed, and this one Julian went into considerable detail as a way of increasing the revenues of the government without imposing any new taxes. And essentially, it's requiring businesses, when they purchase or sell goods or services, to make those invoices available in real time to the tax authorities through a system which allows reconciliation of that versus the GCT that they pay over at the end of the period and so on. So it really tightens up on some of the revenue leakages that now exist. Other countries in Latin America and elsewhere have implemented this system and have been able to generate significant additional revenues. And Julian, being looking at it from a fairly conservative posture, said he believed that we could bring in about 8.6 or something billion, which was roughly 2% of GDP in the first year, recognizing that to implement this system might take, say, 6 to 8 months of hard, diligent work to get it done. But I think it would generate additional revenues in subsequent years.
The Prime Minister has said that it is something they were contemplating, and he's happy that the opposition is supporting it. Were you surprised?
No, because he has a history of adopting our ideas, usually without giving us any credit for it. But in this instance, because it was being adopted so soon after we spoke, I think he felt the necessity to actually attribute it to us.
When do you think this could be implemented?
I think they should start working on it right away. I think it's a very important aspect of making the tax system more efficient, and will relieve taxpayers who are operating honestly and doing what they should do as honest business people, and taking some of the pressure off of the government so that they don't have to imposing new taxes at a time when we're in an economic slump, which was a big part of what we were saying in this budget debate, is that given that we've experienced negative economic growth in the last fiscal year as a result largely of the hurricane, and the year before that, as well with Beryl. You know, this is not a time to be putting taxes on people, further compressing consumer demand and pushing the economy further into a trough. That is bad economics. And if there are other ways of funding the budget which doesn't do that, that should be explored. And that is what we attempted to show.
You mentioned that they should go on this electronic invoicing system right away, but he has said that it would take some digital infrastructure would need to be put in place. Does it sound like a more medium-term idea then?
No, I'm saying they should start working on it right away.
Okay.
It's not going to happen overnight. In terms of the time frame of how quickly it can be done, that's again a function of political will and management expertise. You know, it's possible to get things done quickly if you put the effort behind it, and that's what I would say should happen.
Major talking point, salary. You call the Prime Minister taking his salary increase a shameful deception. What did you mean by that?
We went through a general election campaign speeches, debates, etc. He never told the Jamaican people that if he won the election, he was going to take the salary that he had told the Jamaican people he wasn't going to take. That was a deception. I'm not saying he shouldn't be paid well, but he had made a big song and dance about it after his cabinet approved that massive increase for himself and other ministers, the leader of the opposition and MPs and so on. When the heat reached him, he said, oh, he's not taking it. And he was, you know, holding himself out as a paragon of virtue. How do you think he should have dealt with it? I think he should have dealt with it by proper disclosure and let the people know that this is what his intention was. It was a deception not to do that.
Are you still doing what you said you would do with your salary by donating a portion to charity?
Yes. I do. Every month I spend over $350,000 on worthy causes, and I've continued to do that because the issue with the teachers and others is still unresolved, and I said I was going to continue it until I felt that they had received fair compensation and justice. The way that the public sector compensation transformation. $350,000? Yeah, that's 80% of my increase each month is what I spend on worthy causes. And if you look at the way the public sector compensation transformation took place, classroom teachers in particular and other categories of public sector workers didn't get a significant increase. It was 20% over the 3 years. At a time with inflation and so on, there wasn't really much in it for them. People at the upper ends and people at the very bottom of the public sector wage structure did quite well out of the compensation transformation, but a broad swathe in the middle did not. And I felt that that was inappropriate because that meant that there wasn't equity in the way that the benefits were distributed across the public sector.
Let's go to this clip of the Prime Minister in Parliament speaking about the salary increase that you're being critical of right now.
Speaker. Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition only talks. I do the job of Prime Minister, and I head 4 other ministries. The leader of the opposition only talks. Yes. Many times nonsense. Yes. And takes home $27 million. In the last term, the leader of the opposition earned more than the Prime Minister. The opposition spokesman on finance stood in this house and said the opposition has no problem with the increase in MP salaries.
How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, the salaries were set by his cabinet. And the Prime Minister's salary is, and I think justifiably, the highest of them. And then everybody comes at a level after that. I had no say and have no say in what my salary is. I didn't ask for any increase either. And when it came...
But you nor anyone from the opposition never said, no, we don't want it.
I said I was not going to take it. I wasn't in Parliament on the day that it was announced by Nigel Clark. But once I heard about it, I said, I don't think it's right. Because how can political leaders be accepting increases of hundreds of % when teachers had recently settled under some duress, and many of them were getting 20%. And that is why I said I was making the personal decision that I was going to give up 20%, everything above 20%. To the extent that I got more than 20%, that excess, both of the retroactive and of my ongoing salary, I was going to give up to charities and worthy causes. And I've been doing that ever since. And I think each MP has their own personal situation to address, and I encourage others to do things like that with theirs. They made their own choices. The Prime Minister says he didn't collect his, or he didn't receive his. Now, I don't know how he was able to arrange that. Maybe he got Cabinet to vary the decision that they had made the week before, because it was after I said I wasn't going to take it that he then went and said, oh, well, he's not going to take it either. And he got the relevant decision authorizing the increase to be modified, I assume, for himself. He never offered me that opportunity.
Okay, we do have to take another break, but there are so much more issues to speak about. We still want to dig into a little bit more of what Mr. Golding had presented in Parliament, and also get his response to some of the big project proposals that the Prime Minister spoke about in Parliament. Stay with us for this special lead story budget special. We'll be right back.
Start your journey with a Jane Bank Small Business Loan, with small business loans with as little as $10,000 and up to $4 million.
The time is 8:30.
Welcome back. We're going straight now to the issue of Cuba. Mr. Golding, you raised concerns that the government's position with regard to Cuba, and you said that the reasons given for ending the medical cooperation program are unconvincing. Given the current reality, though, and the posture of the United States, wouldn't a PNP government have been in the same position?
I would have been very reluctant to take away and end an arrangement that started under the People's National Party in the 1970s, and which has served Jamaica and the Jamaican people very well. And there's a huge gap in our medical service, which the Cubans have been filling. Now, I'm not privy to the pressures that may or may not have been brought to bear on the government by the U.S. government on this matter. So, what I would say is this, that they have had some time to make alternative arrangements to fill that gap, and that they have failed to do so. And I think that was another example of mismanagement and negligence on their part. So by ending the arrangement unilaterally, the Cubans have said, without alternative arrangements being put in place to ensure that Jamaicans who were relying on this for their cataract surgeries and other eye operations, and those who are in rural parts and can see a doctor because there's a Cuban doctor there, those people are not going to be served.
What would you have done differently?
I would have explained to the U.S. that if we were going to phase out such a program, and I don't think that the reasons given by the government are sound, because I don't think it's anything to do with pay arrangements and so on. I think it was really a response to the pressure.
They say it goes against Jamaican law and international law.
Yeah, what law? Have they told you what law? I'm a lawyer. I'm not aware of any law that the arrangement was violating, and it's been in place for 50 years and has been run by their government and by us on repeated administrations. I think they were responding to the pressures that were brought to bear, and I'm not going to comment on whether they should or shouldn't have done that, because I'm not privy to those discussions. But I would have ensured that if we had to do something like that, it would have been phased out over a period of time where alternative arrangements would have been brought in place so that the people wouldn't suffer.
He praised Michael Manley, saying he's someone he respects, but he said he questioned his judgment in relation to, in fact, let's just go to this moment when he spoke about Michael Manley in Parliament last Thursday.
Are the facts. Michael Manley and this is part of why I admire him as well, would come back to power a reformed man in 1989, abandoning the policy of democratic socialism, embracing the IMF, liberalization, privatization, free markets, and pursuing closer ties with the United States. And this is what the part of the history that is not reconciled. Why did we go down that path?
In the first place. Should not have gone down that path. Only to go to the White House.
That is the question that keeps bothering me. Because it must bother every Jamaican, because had we not diverted for 10 years, even if we had changed government, but kept strategic and wise policies, Jamaica would be far better. Far better. As we have seen with countries.
Is that true, Mr. Goulding?
Look, that is his interpretation of history. It's not facts. The record of the Michael Manley government is one which stands on its own. They established institutions like the National Housing Trust, built tens of thousands of affordable housing for the people of Jamaica, introduced free education at every level. So many Jamaicans had access to education because of the policies of Michael Manley.
Speaking specifically about the stance in relation to the United States and Mr. Manley and how he came out during that particular period and that particular issue.
The main issue that the US government had with Michael Manley at the time related to Africa and the fight against apartheid, and in particular, the South Africa's insistence that they were going to try and invade Angola and drive out the government of Angola so that they could control. This is the apartheid government. And Michael Manley said he was going to support Cuba's effort to ensure that that didn't happen. And Henry Kissinger and others reacted to that negatively, and there was a policy of destabilization at the time, with the JLP in opposition allowed itself to be manipulated in and become an agent of the CIA to destabilize the PNP government of the time. And this is documented, there's no doubt about this. I'm not making anything up. Now, the world changed. The Soviet Union collapsed. The Eastern Bloc disintegrated, and Michael Manley, in his second time as Prime Minister, made some adjustments to the policy, not eliminating our objective, which is our historic mission of empowering the Jamaican people, righting the historical wrongs that have been part and parcel of our history, but looking at different ways in which we could, the tactics of how you get there. And that included some of the things that the Prime Minister spoke about: liberalization, eliminating exchange control, trade, removing trade licensing, and so on. So the current system that Jamaica's economic arrangements has been based on is really originated with Michael Manley in the early 1990s. So yes, Michael's thinking had to evolve because the world, objective conditions of the world changed, you know, and one has to be flexible. You can't be rooted in a past paradigm which is no longer relevant.
And on that point, the PM has said that in this dynamic foreign policy environment, Jamaica must be strategic. We cannot go down the road of ideology and rhetoric. So is the PNP's position too idealistic? I
don't know what the idealism is of which you speak. I'm saying that if you're going to succumb to pressure to send home doctors under an arrangement that has been benefiting the people of Jamaica for 50 years, you must make alternative arrangements so that they are not going to suffer from the lack of medical care that was being provided. That's the point I have made.
Beach policy. The government has also tabled the National Beach Access Policy. Has the opposition yet taken a position on that? Does it solve the problem of shutting out Jamaicans out of the island's beaches?
I haven't studied the policy. It was only tabled in last week. It's a thick document. I've been doing other things. I will look at it. We have been on record repeatedly saying that the current arrangements where Jamaicans are being excluded from beaches right across the country is unjust and cannot be supported, and the government must step in. Ironically, there are provisions in the existing law to facilitate that. You can get an easement. The Beach Control Authority has statutory power to require an easement, which is a right-of-way over land, to get to the beach. And the landowner has to be compensated for the value of that. But that power has not been used. I think the government has had to accept that this is a problem, which is why they've tabled this policy now, and I will be looking at it with interest, but I haven't yet studied it.
Yeah. In terms of some of your own suggestions, you are proposing a national insurance scheme. Is this feasible?
In the medium term, this is not something that can be done overnight. But I do think it's important that we find a way of allowing people to finance their medical costs without having to go into bankruptcy. And, you know, as an MP, I experience this a lot, where persons, you know, need money to, they go to public health facilities, and although the treatment there is supposed to be free, the diagnostic tests are not available because the equipment's not working. Medical or surgical implants that are needed for surgeries, they have to go and buy those. Many of the drugs that they need are not currently available under the NHS.
So to be clear, would you discontinue the free healthcare program?
No, we would put in place a national insurance scheme, which would have to be funded, so that some of the burdens of healthcare and the cost of it would be borne by that scheme through insurance, rather than individuals who are unfortunately suffering from a medical condition. Yeah. And remember, the National Health Fund was established by the PNP. You know, all of the institutions of this country that have been put in place to help people have an easier life and a better life originated, most of them, with the People's National Party, and many of them were the brainchilds of people like Michael Manley and PJ Patson and Portia Simpson Miller.
You said the government needs to accelerate the transition to renewable energy. There is a national target to have 50% of Jamaica's energy coming from renewables by 2030. Yeah. Wouldn't the government argue that this shows their intent?
A target doesn't show intent. A target is rhetoric unless you actually do what's required to meet the target. And their record in the area of energy transformation is pitiful. In the 10 years they've been in government, they've only issued one request for proposals, which has brought on stream 2 projects which have not been able to get off the ground yet because of the uncertainties around the whole electricity regulatory framework, with JPS's license coming to an end and so on. They have really dropped the ball, and we should be much further along in reaching our target for renewables, which we fully embrace, and in fact, which was something that we had announced long before. But when we were in government last, which was only for 4 years, we passed the Current Electricity Act to create a framework with an independent body to do the procurement of new electricity generation, and a number of the projects that are now already on stream, came on stream in 2016-17, were as a result of that work. So, you know, we don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk.
We are upon a break. We want to hear some of the walk that you'll be walking when you come back. And I do have another issue I want to put here about that special economic zone for agriculture that you proposed as well. But stay with us. We have one more segment with Mark Golding, the opposition leader, talking about some of his proposals that he presented in the budget debate, and also responding to some of the issues raised by the Prime Minister in his presentation last Thursday. Stay with us. This is Lead Story Budget Special on CVM TV.
The seed for potscapes was planted many years ago when, by chance, I acquired a few succulents, and there was a gap in the market where persons were actually looking for a wide variety of succulents as well as guidance in succulent care. So I went through all the required steps to make the business a reality. The vision of Potscapes was to be an online plant store. To do so, we required an e-payment gateway. Sagicor Bank's e-payment system was very reliable and was a perfect fit for our business. My business blossomed when we established a storefront at 29 Upper Waterloo Road. My Sagicor business bankers supported me tremendously in the early stages and continue to do so. I received solid advice as how to navigate the business processes and to positively impact others through plans.
On March 28 at 6 p.m., John Mark Wigan presents his album launch, By Fire, live at the Jamaica College Auditorium. By Fire features the likes of Kevin Downswell, Rondell Positive, Alicia Taylor, Gilead Collective, Genesis Praise Squad, Audia Spencer Brown, Ryan Davis, Prince Saj. General tickets $4,000. Sponsored by JP St. Mary's, Credit Unions of Jamaica, Honey Bun, Chicken and Things, CVM, Love 101, Green Room Studios, Painted Lady Studios, Crosslinks Production, Imperium Gospel Limited. Proceeds support the Student Housing Initiative.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Mark Golding, the leader of the opposition, in relation to the budget debate. Mr. Golding, you said that Jamaica should set up special economic zones for agriculture, focusing on export crops where we have competitive advantage. For example, yam, spices, orchard crops. You have a special interest in ganja, where, you know, since you were Justice Minister when the changes were made to the Dangerous Drugs Act to allow for medicinal cannabis industry to develop. How satisfied are you with the current state of the ganja sector?
Not satisfied at all. I think we should be much further along. The government has shown an ineptness. They do not manage regulatory frameworks and legislative developments in a timely manner. The interim regulations that were put in place, which we drafted, should have been reviewed, adjustments should be made, because the licensees in the industry have a lot of complaints about the way in which the industry is functioning.
What more do you think needs to be done to that end?
I think we need to, first of all, be much more accommodating of small farmers. Small farmers should be encouraged to come into the industry, and they should be given the red carpet and facilitated in doing so. And the costs of doing that should be absorbed by the state. We shouldn't be cutting down acres of ganja across the island now at a time when people are suffering. Those farmers should have been in the lawful net, in the lawful industry, and they should be able to sell their products through retail channels which are lawful, where the pricing is stronger. And indeed, export markets should be, we should be looking, JAMPRO should be actively seeking export markets. Germany, for example, is a massive market where they have decriminalized medicinal use, and there are many others.
Just last week, we got some videos from St. Elizabeth where the police were burning down acres of ganja, just taking them out and burning them down. You're saying you don't think that should be happening. How does the government, what should happen?
The policy of the government over the last decade should have been to proactively reach out to communities where ganja is grown, to bring them into the lawful industry.
Places like in Westmoreland and
Westmoreland, of course, St. Elizabeth, are there. We know where the ganja in the country is largely grown, but most of those farmers remain outside of the formal lawful economy, and they suffer this type of activity as a result. And I think it's a shame, because we have a strong product and we have a strong brand in ganja. You know, Bob Marley and Peter Tosh and others, you know, took the message to the world. And yet we are not really getting the benefits that I had hoped and dreamed of then when I piloted and developed the regulatory framework and decriminalized personal use of ganja.
Yeah, we have, Mr. Golding, and there are so many other issues we could go into, but we're going to do things a little differently for the final few minutes of this program. We call this segment the Fact or Fiction. I'm going to give you these cards.
Red, green, and
this
gold.
means you are indifferent to the answer. You're not so sure about what the answer should be. This has usually meant no, you disagree with the answer being given, and this means you are in agreement. We should say we are using these colors because this is globally accepted, you know, green means...
Well, I'm sure my opponents will take a screenshot of me holding a green flag and use it to their political advantage. But anyway, we'll proceed. Go ahead.
Okay, let's bring it up on screen. Fact or spin? The first one. The opposition plan sounds good, but is economically risky.
Well, we are committed to the fiscal responsibility framework, which we implemented in 2013 in its current form. But we also recognize that for Jamaica to get out of the woods now, at a time when our productive capacity has been badly damaged by a Category 5 hurricane, it requires the state to take a proactive stance towards getting the economy back into a positive trajectory. And so we feel that the way that the government has crafted this budget for the coming fiscal year doesn't really achieve that, because they've imposed $18 billion, I think it is, of new taxes, and they're continuing to take money out of the major housing agency when housing is a big problem, and there should be massive investment in housing going on. And you know, what we're hearing about is road bypass projects that are going to come on stream over the next 2 to 3 years and so on. So no, I don't agree with that little thing that was on the screen there.
Okay, remember it's quick answers, all right, Mr. Golding, so 20 seconds or less.
20 seconds
Next
or
one,
less.
fact or fiction? And these were taken from what the factor or spin, what the Prime Minister said last week. Jamaica secured US $6.7 billion faster than ever before. Proof the economy is strong. Is this fact or spin?
Well, the multilaterals,
you have to indicate.
I can't bother the green thing, but the multilaterals came with a package, which I think it is true that Jamaica's achievements over the last 15 years have put us in a position where we're able to raise resources. But bear in mind, 2.4 billion, I think it is, out of that 6.7 has to be sourced from the private sector. It's not a given. It's just the multilaterals have said they're going to try and help to mobilize those resources, but they're not providing those resources. So that's not yet committed to Jamaica.
Fact or spin? The next one then. Let's go to the other one. Jamaica has basically achieved full employment. Fact or spin?
That is whatever this means. The truth is that the
partially agree.
Yeah, no, it is true that the formal unemployment statistics show that we have reached close to full employment, but that measures informal employment. You only have to be employed 1 hour per week to be treated as being formally employed. And many of the workers don't have the kind of benefits that formal employment bring in terms of, things like vacation leave and a pension arrangement and so on. So the employment statistics are a bit misleading in the sense that they don't really give you a full picture of the nature of the employment in the country.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fact or spin? We're almost out of time. Let's see if we can get in 1 or 2 more. The housing crisis is not about money, it's about supply. Fact or spin?
Well, supply is a function of money. So if you don't invest in housing, you're not going to be building housing solutions to meet the demand. And if you're not providing financing for people on terms that they can access, you're not meeting the demand either, which is why we had programs like the idea of allowing people to rent to own and so on. There were a number of things that we were coming with to bring people into the mortgage market who are currently excluded.
Okay, I think we have time for one more. One more. Fact or spin? NARA will finally fix Jamaica's slow project execution problem. Fact or spin?
That's not a fact. That is an aspirational statement. We don't know what NARA will deliver. That remains to be seen.
Says a red flag. Says a red.
Well, whichever flag you want. But my point is that let us see how NARA performs in the years to come. Saying things and achieving them are two different things. And execution is not this government's strong point, as we can see from things like the South Coast Highway, which has taken so long and is still incomplete, and many other things we could talk about. So I'm hoping that NARA will be effective at delivering efficient execution of projects, large-scale projects, but that remains to be seen.
You mentioned I'll just take one more of these, but it's the second time I've heard you mention the South Coast Highway project, and I want to go to something on the One Road Authority with you. Let's take one more fact or spin. My producer tells me we have time for fact or spin. Jamaica is on track to ending NHT withdrawals. Okay, so we're not taking that one. Jamaica is on track to become a global logistics hub like Dubai or Singapore.
I don't think we're on track to achieving that. I think that's something we should be pursuing relentlessly, because we have the capacity to be a major player in logistics in the world trade routes because of our geographic location. We speak English, etc. We have the 7th largest natural harbor in the world. But we are not nearly along as far as we should be in building the ecosystem locally to encourage that kind of investment. We're still trying to get the Caymanas economic zone going for 10 years after it was, more than 10 years after it was conceptualized. That's why I'm saying there's a deficit in execution. We're good at talk, we're good at PR, but we're not good at delivering for the people.
Yeah, in relation to roads, in relation to the government's announcement that it plans to create a One Road Authority, you said, quote, "We are not against streamlining responsibilities. However, local authorities must be empowered to execute robust road repair and maintenance programs Wouldn't that be the very opposite of what the One Road Authority should be doing, though?
No, I don't think so. My understanding from what they have said, and they haven't put anything really out there in detail yet, but they have given assurances that there will be an ongoing role for local authorities in road repair and maintenance. And I think it's very important that that be the case, because the local authorities are more responsive to the people's needs on the ground. They know where the issues are. And from a point of view of approving projects and so on, they have all the necessary arrangements already in place within the local authorities to get the job done quickly. Where they fall down on is that they don't have funding to do what they should be doing. So that the One Road Authority, as I understand it, is more about regulation and streamlining who does what, rather than saying who's actually, that the One Road Authority is going to be fixing all the roads in Jamaica. That would not be practical.
Favour Williams, Finance Minister, closes the budget debate tomorrow. What does she need to say that would make you satisfied with her presentation when she speaks tomorrow?
I don't think there's anything that the minister could say that would satisfy me, because the budget is already cast. I don't think she's in a position to recast it, and I don't think it achieves the economic objectives that are necessary at this time. I would like to see her fix a couple of things, if possible, including the way in which the Environmental Protection Levy has been designed, which I think is flawed and puts local manufacturers at a disadvantage relative to importers. And maybe you could run that clip from my speech next time around so that people can understand that point.
Yeah, we are just about out of time. Can't let you go without asking a couple internal developments. We saw recently Damon Crawford leaving the PAAAC. Why was that allowed to happen? Is he being pushed aside?
Not
because
at all.
of his aspirations to lead?
Not at all, no. I mean, Damon is a valued member of the party. I did my best to encourage him to come back into representational politics. When he identified the seat that he wanted to run in, I did my best to facilitate it so that he got it. I've made him spokesperson for a very critical portfolio, which he has a passion about, which is education. So no, he's a vital part of the future of the party and somebody I work with well.
Is there a rift brewing with himself and Peter Bunting that you need to fix?
No, I don't think so. I think that they got along quite well when they were in the Senate. I think, you know, Damien had his own views about the way in which the PAAC is structured and how it operates, and it wasn't something that he felt was conducive to his way of communicating ideas and so on. So he asked if he could be relieved of that post, and I said, sure. You know, I conferred with Peter Bunting, who's the chairman. He said, if Damien wants to step down, that's okay. That's up to Damien. And we put Dr. Dawes there, who's very capable as well, and you know, there are many avenues in which people can serve in the opposition, and I'm sure Damien will continue to show the value that he brings to our team.
Well, we can't continue right here. We are entirely out of time. Mr. Golding, thank you so much for speaking with us here on Lead Story Budget Special. We have been speaking with Mark Golding, the leader of the opposition, about the budget debate and many other issues that have come out of his presentation, the Prime Minister's presentation, as well as a little bit of what's happening internally in the People's National Party. Stay with us. Tomorrow, we'll have another budget special on Lead Story Prime with Jody and Corey. I'm Giovanni Dennis. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Lead Story Prime, Budget Special, brought to you by...
Managing your investments with Sagicor is now easy as ever. Contact your wealth advisor to update your personal information.
Every dream conquered is another dream gained. I land and I fly again like a jet plane. Headed straight in your direction. 'Cause I'm wiser, one step closer. I'm winning 'cause I work so hard. And the music keeps on playing. People never say we are march up the night.